This week on Supercars Talk, Simona's back, and she'll be joined by Will, Brody, and Thomas. This week on the eSeries wildcard front, we've got a great one for the fans of female drivers who don't like ones who are whoring themselves out on OnlyFans. Simona is back. So, Simona Di Silvestro, who was a mainstay of the game for 3 years, she'll be back driving a Harvey Norman Mustang this week. And no one's saying whether it's a Kelly Racing Mustang or not. A little bit there to be answered. It'll be, by the looks of things, it'll be in her similar Harvey Norman colours. Looked pretty sponsorless, the rest of the car. So I don't think it's a tie-up as a kind of third Kelly car for the round. She'll be running her normal number 78 that she ran while she was here. Speaking of third cars from teams, it looks like Will Power will be in a third Shell V-Power Mustang. It'll be interesting to see if he ends up in front of Captain Lamb or not. Fabian hasn't been doing too bad in the E-Series though. He's doing all right. And we're also going to see Brody Kostecki and Thomas Randall racing, I was going to say this weekend, but it's actually tomorrow night. I would assume that Brody's going to be running in Penrite colours. He'll be running for Penrite at the endurance races, if they ever happen this year. And Thomas Randall possibly in a fifth BJR car. Or what I'd love to see is a Sky Sands Mustang. That would be great. Some quick news for the week. The sponsor of the series, Virgin Australia, looks like they've gone into liquidation today. That's not great news for the category. Probably going to lose the main naming rights sponsor of the category. I have heard, though, that it could be there's no actual money changing hands on this deal. It's purely free flights for the series. And it looks like, from what I've heard, free flights of up to $1.5 million, which really, to buy naming rights to the whole series, that's not a lot of money if you consider, the budgets that if you're, a budget kind of back of the grid team, let's say Techno Team Sydney, you're probably looking at about a budget of $1.5 million to run the car. If you want to run up the front, I've heard numbers of up to, I think people are getting carried away. I have heard that Penske was spending $9 million on each car last year. I think reality is probably a lot lower. I think you're probably looking, around that kind of $5 to $6 million kind of bracket to run, a Triple Eight or Penske car. So if you think to name the whole series, $1.5 million, there's probably quite a few sponsors out there that are, Coca-Cola, what are they spending on? Well, they're probably spending nothing at Techno Team Sydney to get the whole car. But say for a company like Coca-Cola, $1.5 million out of the whole advertising budget would be an absolute drop in the ocean. I have heard that there was also a little bit of a deal of about 35 grand of contra again on each car. So that means, each car that puts the Virgin stickers on there, they get 35 grand worth of free flights for that car. So, a four-car team's getting 140 grand worth of free flights. Probably not much in what they kind of spend over the whole year. It would be a little bit of a help. But when you think about it, it's not a big, massive value deal. It's probably more one of those things, having one of those blue chip companies sponsor the series makes it look better for everyone else. You think back, IndyCar's had a few kind of questionable, name right sponsors. When you look at our series, someone like a Shell or, now Virgin naming rights to the series, it kind of gives it a bit of credibility. That might be a bit lost again without, a major sponsor. Let's hope they pull through though, because, we don't want the situation where Qantas is the only option for flights in Australia. There's some talk that the series could end at the Bathurst 12 hour next year if we get a series underway this year. I think we're probably going to have some non-spectator rounds at some point, probably Augustish. My gut feeling is at the moment, the way everything's tracking, we'll see the series probably kick off at Tailem Bend, which we're not going to have any fans there anyway, so it won't affect things too much. And then we can lead on into Bathurst. That's going to be a hard one if we're not allowed to have fans. And then probably seeing, say like a Winton and Phillip Island and places like that hosting rounds to fill out the year. They're saying, Townsville's got a few weeks to make a decision. Townsville's not going to happen this year. And I could nearly see Newcastle not happening as well, depending on, Newcastle Gold Coast. Things would have to go fairly back to normal for those events to happen, because really there's no point running a street event without the fans there. Bathurst is definitely a hard one. There's a lot of money tied up in TV and that there, and with the traditional date. Anyway, they're saying that to fit everything in, we'll run, the series into the start of next year. And apparently the series has to, as part of the contract with the Newcastle round, is that the series finishes the year at Newcastle, or in New South Wales. So the way around that on the contract is, we'll finish the series at the Bathurst 12 hour. So, of course, the 12 hour guys are up in arms about, how will the Supercars like being the support category to our big event? Well, I can tell you something here. Supercars will not play the support role to the Bathurst 12 hour. They will be the main event, even if it's a support event. Your 10,000 fans that turn up at the Bathurst 12 hour and your 50,000 or whatever that watch on TV will pale in comparison to the 100,000 that turn up for the Supercars and, the 500,000 that watch on TV or, whatever the figures are. Whatever happens, I'm sorry, GT3, you're going to play second fiddle to the Supercars in this country for now and probably well into the future. So the racing for tomorrow night. I have heard that there's going to be a top 10 shootout. Going off the qualifying last weekend, this could be the most boring top 10 shootout at Bathurst we've ever seen. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they do something where we can see some split times, because the cars are running so great these days. I mean, you don't get laps like, Brocky's in the VN Commodore where he's, fishtailing it over the ripple strips and stuff that, ultimately wasn't that quick, but it looks spectacular. It's so hard to tell these days, the difference between a Scott McLaughlin pole lap and, someone who's going to end up, a Lee Holdsworth in 10th position or something like that. It's a bit generous on Lee for that one. Anyway, so I've heard there's going to be a top 10 shootout. Anyway, we'll see if that happens or not. So we've got 3 races over the night. Race 8 will be 8 laps with a compulsory pit stop. Race 9 will be 8 laps with a compulsory pit stop, but it'll be a reverse grid of the first race. And then race 10 will be 14 laps with 2 compulsory pit stops. I assume that they'll have a qualifying session, a top 10 shootout. Then we'll have the starting grid for the first race, and then the third race will be kind of an amalgamation of the finishing positions of the first 2 races, or maybe we'll start the finishing positions of the second race, something like that. Once again, details are a little bit sketchy with this. Not complaining too much because it's all been put together pretty quickly. So a favourite part of the talk, liveries. The Penrite cars are going to run their special Anzac livery that they'd planned to run at Auckland. Would have been this weekend, Anzac Day this weekend. So they're going to run that, I assume, across the 3 cars. As I said, Simona's going to be running a Harvey Norman livery, and Will Power's going to be running a Shell livery. We can assume that Brodie will be running, his Penrite livery, and that Thomas Randall will be running either a BJR kind of livery or a Sky Sands livery. And once again, the big question on everybody's lips, what will Nick Percat's paint job be? Time will tell. So that's it for this week. Another quick, short, sharp one. Hopefully the sound's a little bit better on this one. I've actually been playing with mic location a bit in this COVID lockdown. I've, had a bit of time to mess around with a few little bits and pieces. I've also ordered myself a webcam, which fingers crossed that turns up before we do the eSeries review. I'm not holding my breath as I paid extra for express postage and I still haven't got confirmation that they've sent it yet. So, might be back to the Surface Pro that crashes. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you later. One in a million.